Hi everybody! I'd like to show you some modifications today for exercises that you might find uncomfortable or even painful for your wrist and or hands and fingers. That might be because of arthritis, inflammation, injuries, or even lack of mobility or flexibility around that area. I'll show you a couple of modifications that are really easy to make and that are going to make exercises like planks, push-ups, even all fours or tabletop in yoga much more accessible. So let's get started. One of the first things you want to check out is your hand and finger alignment or placement. So it's really important when you're doing anything supported by your hands to spread your fingers out really, really wide. So really try to increase the range of motion of the fingers themselves and then also the space between them. One of the other things you want to think about is making sure your hands are far enough apart. So shoulder distance is usually a good standard of measure to start with. And then you can start to widen out your hand placement to take some pressure and distribute the weight away from the center. So those are some tips you can start with right away. Spread the fingers apart and then get the hands wide. Another thing you want to think about when you're actually placing your hands on the ground is to keep some weight around the index finger knuckle. Okay, so right here at this little knuckle pad. When we start to roll weight out toward the pinky side of our palm, it starts to put pressure on the neck. So try to get a little bit more weight on the index finger knuckle whenever you place your hands on the ground. So one of the other things you might think about, especially when you're on your hands and your knees, such as in tabletop and yoga, is where exactly the hands are in relationship to your shoulders. So first, remember we're going to think about spreading the hands or the fingers really wide, getting some pressure on the index finger knuckle, making sure the hands are about shoulder distance apart, maybe a little wider to distribute the weight out away from the center line. And then you want to think about the angle of the wrist. So this is a 90-degree angle here. I'm right over my wrist with my shoulders. To take some pressure off of my wrist and decrease the angle, you can start to walk the knees back or similarly walk the hands forward. So now my hands are in front of my shoulders. I've decreased this angle here. I've actually increased the angle, I suppose, but it's not 90 degrees anymore. And then my shoulders are slightly behind my wrists. So that should help too, to take a little bit of pressure off of the wrists and hands. You'll immediately feel that load start to lighten. Another really handy trick or tool in taking weight off of the wrists or changing the angle is to use yoga blocks. So we're going to take the blocks to their second highest setting. So the narrow end is facing upward, and then you just place the hands right here and turn the hands out slightly to allow the fingers to drop down. People find that this really is a much more comfortable position than trying to get the hand flat on the ground. And then, you can move into your planks, your down dog, or your tabletop positions here. And this should be a lot more comfortable. You can also play around with the height of the block. So if you wanted to take it to its lowest setting and get your hand a little flatter or your thumb on the same level as your palm, and then turn the hands out to allow the fingers to drop down. Some people find that this is helpful in moving into plank. But again, remember that even if you're using the blocks, you can change the angle of your wrist by just moving the hands in front of the shoulders a bit, right? Or the knees back a little bit, and then the hips back over the knees. So that should help you work toward getting a little more bend at the wrist, and then also taking some weight off of the wrist as needed. If you don't have yoga blocks, you can also use some props that you might find around your house. I'm using a yoga blanket here, but you could grab any blanket that you have handy. And then we're going to fold it up so that I can create sort of a shelf here. And what I'm going to do is decrease the angle of my wrist by placing the very edge of my palm at the edge of the blanket so that I can angle my fingers down lower than my wrist. Do you see that? So I'm angling down. This might not be as stable as a yoga block. You might find that you have to adjust because there's a little slippage going on, but it can work in a pinch. So again, we're gonna spread our fingers wide, bring our hands about shoulder distance apart, and then use this so that we have less of an angle here, right, at the wrist. And then you can move into your position, maybe with the hands in front of the shoulders a little bit, or if you want to press up into plank here. Again, you might find that it's a little less stable because you might slip a bit, but you can stay here for a while before you need to adjust. So that's another way to do things, right? So I just keep changing the angle of the wrist to make it more comfortable, and then move my body weight back away from the hands to take weight off of them. Another tip you might check out is the melt method, and that's at meltmethod.com. And Sue Hitzman uses a system of soft foam rollers and balls to bring hydration to the fascial tissue network of the body, help people get out of chronic pain. So specifically, the hand treatment would be really great here. You would want to do this before your workout. That requires you to put weight on your hands, and bringing that hydration to the tissues of the hands and all the way up to the neck will help alleviate pain and make your experience a lot more comfortable. So let me know if you'd like more information about the melt method or how to do the hand treatment. I can teach you that. One more tip I didn't mention yet is to stand up and do any of these exercises that require you to support yourself on your hands against a wall. So you'll be able to practice getting the angle of flexion and the mobility around the wrist joint without putting all of your body weight onto the hand and the wrist. I hope this was helpful in giving you some tips and tricks to take weight or pressure or even pain off of your wrists and hands during certain exercises. If all else fails, take a break. Move your wrist around, move your fingers around, come back to it as you can, and work up to it. You can start to build that resiliency, flexibility, and mobility and strength if you're patient. Please let me know if you have any questions. I love to connect. I'm at Meghan at meghanhayes.com. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for watching.